All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the November 21st, 2024 regular meeting of the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District Finance Committee, and I'm going to call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock on the mark, I believe, and we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a quorum here of 4. And our next item is to look over today's agenda and see if there are any comments, questions. If not, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I'll move to adopt.
Do we have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Today's agenda is adopted, and now we move to public forum. Seeing no one in the room from the public. Do we have anybody online from the public?
No public.
All right, no public. I will close public forum for today. And move on to our next item, which is a review and approval of the minutes from August 22nd. Has it been August 22nd since our last meeting?
Yes, it was.
All right, I had a chance to look over them. I'm okay with them.
I will make note. Oh, sorry, you're still on minutes. I apologize. I'm one ahead of myself. My brain is not numbering today.
Eager to get through the day, are we?
A little bit.
Any exceptions, questions?
I haven't seen one.
All right, do we have a motion for adoption?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor of adoption of the minutes of August?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved from August. All right, the item you are eager to get to.
I apologize.
Our
Mr. Chair.
informational
This is
item
my third public
number
meeting this
5.
week, so I'm itching and ready to be on the way. So the financial reports, we will be doing a much deeper dive within the action items. So I think if you have any questions, you can ask them. I wanted to point out within the grant report that there are 2 additional grants that we've applied for. They're a little bit complicated, but I'll try to give you the gist of them. There's 2. The first one is, and I don't know if I think I forgot to update the grant sheet nonetheless again. So they're actually opposite. I'm just scrolling, hold on 1 second. So there's 2. One is for the dam. Oh my goodness. I apologize, hang on 1 second, I'm trying to get it back. Okay, so you'll notice on grants funding submitted, the last, yes, I have not updated them yet. So the one that I would like you to take note of is Walton Lake Sediment Removal Project and Mark Edson Dam Spillway Inspection Project, 2nd and 3rd from the bottom.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry?
What page are you on?
It's 38. You're too far. It's right after the original set of financial reports. So we're like to the minutes. Yeah, I think go from there. Trying to keep turning the pages you see. The one's the nice color, next colorful one is like right there.
Okay. A little forward of midway through, I think.
Okay.
Martha, you got it?
Yep, got it.
So basically, I just want to point out that there are these 2 additional grants that we applied for. They are flip-flopped. I just got to change the names. So the Mark Edson Dam is the one that's $147,537. Basically, this is to do some work that was required from DSOD, or Division of Safety of Dams. They are requiring us to do some work on the cracks that are existing on the spillway. So they're like expansion joints, and we have to protect those from having an Oroville-like blowout. So that grant will help us to pay for the required work that we have to do up there.
Sounds stumpy.
It is correct, yes, Stumpy. And so the second one is the Walton Lake sediment removal project. So you'll see that the total project cost is $6.2 million. Basically, we have a bunch of funding pots for that. The first one is we are seeking a DWR grant for $3.7 million to pay for some of that. We also are receiving some money from FEMA under the emergency declaration of the mosquito wildfire. That is about approximately $1.5 million. And the balance of that project would be the district would have to pay $1 million for a portion of the sediment removal. So that is a hopeful grant that we can get to offset those costs. Otherwise, the district will have to pay everything except for the $1.5 million that's coming from FEMA.
Okay.
And that's the only update that I had to this report. I just wanted to make sure I pointed those out for you all as a committee.
Did the district have any ARPA money?
Very
American
little,
Rescue.
very
Okay.
little. We only got $50,000 to pay for our castle study, the assessment plan that we have.
Okay, I asked because I ran across a article today mentioning that all ARPA money had to be under contract by December 31st, so.
Yeah, we've been still working with El Dorado County, and they have allocated all the rest of their funds towards, I believe, Tahoe City or South Tahoe. I apologize for not knowing which one.
So,
But they had a little bit left over.
but that didn't sound like it's any issue for us because the castle study's already been
Correct.
contracted for. Okay.
Yes.
Financial reports, grant report, so those are informational. Is that all you have for
That is
informational
all I
items?
had, yes.
Is there any update today on the fee study, or is that worked into some of the items coming
I
up?
think that what the board has requested of you today is to take a deep dive into the budget, see where we are in regards to budget to actuals. And that was what their request was of you to look at, say start on page.
So I guess just to keep us on item for item, the answer to that is yes, and it's coming up, so we'll move formally on to action item number 6, is that?
Correct. And we're not formally going over the rate study, but we are going over the budget that will be, the budget numbers that are used in the rate study.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll turn it over to you to walk us through action item, starting with 6A.
Yeah, so starting on page, what am I on here? This is page 88.
Not sure we have the same page numbers that you
Yeah,
have.
they're not paged on the bottom.
Yeah.
I think I've got mine starting on page 1 and 9 halfway through.
One of nine.
It's the next set of colorful pages that look like the budget pages that are part of those ones like that he has right there, yeah,
Towards the end.
towards the end, yeah. Right there, Andy, we got it. And generally what the look was, how much of the budget that we actually budgeted for did we use? And is there any recommendations to maybe decrease some of the budget numbers that we have based on previous years? And whether or not the spending is warranted. This is more of a look at, did we guess right on what budget we are having for this upcoming year based on previous years? And the reason we're kind of looking at this now is because we didn't get the final end of the year June numbers done until October. So we had to wait till year-end closeouts and anything that gets moved around. As you probably know, when we spend money, even sometimes outside of the fiscal year for a project that was within the old fiscal year, we have to adjust and reallocate money. So we can look at 5,100 and what you'll see is the column in question, the biggest column in question is the one that would be fourth from the right, and that'd be the percent of budget remaining.
Mhm.
So those are the ones that would probably take the most analysis of whether or not we got it right or got it wrong. Now, obviously, there are some where we got it right and some where we got it wrong. If there's anything that you are pinpointing to, I would welcome kind of some discussion. We can start at 5,100 and we can go over them. I have both Adam and Jessica here who are, you know, gonna be able to answer whether or not something is, for whatever reason, plus, minus, negative, or even a big minus.
Go ahead and start with salaries. That's always huge. So you did have 25% savings, and what's the backstory to that savings?
So the salaries, this is one that I'll handle. We have had some shifting of people throughout the company. And this is one of those departments that is a little bit of a feeder department to other areas of the agency. So we generate a lot of the maintenance workers who move up to become either canal operators or they move up to become distribution operators. And those salaries get allocated in other locations. You'll notice the overtime and the part-time on this one. You're not at credit. So the salaries are paid through different locations when we have temporary employees and people who are fill-ins for this department. So that's where the 25% savings would come. It's not really a 25% savings. It's kind of a facsimile.
Kind of like to go down just line by line.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So salaries is not the lack of need for labor. It's just how things are being allocated elsewhere. Overtime, I think year over year, I presume, and you know, 14,000 versus 17, that's not a ton of overtime money to
No,
begin
it's
with,
not
and
at
it's
all.
really gonna be driven by emergencies.
That is correct.
So
Right.
that'd be a hard one for me to recommend, taking any away from, because when
Well,
you need it, you
it's
need it.
certainly within a reasonable amount percentage. Matter of fact, it's probably low in my estimation, but there's not much you can do about that.
For 51 and 52, those departments, their overtime is pretty much gonna be, except for storm and events until irrigation season starts again.
And you'll notice kind of moving to the next couple columns, we've spent about 8,600 already of the 14,000, so about 39%. You know, we're about 40% through the year. You know, 50% obviously is January 1st. So are we tracking, you know, positively? Probably. So I think that's a good one, a good kind of note to take that. Maybe the 14 is right, and every so often we'll have one where we go a little bit over. And then if you want to go to standby pay, so standby pay is that's the on-call pay, and I would say that this is there a reason why this is low? I don't really think there's a reason why it's low. It's just a calculation, and then the reason that the budget number goes up in 2024, 2025 is a allocation through the MOU process of a larger standby pay payout to the employees.
These are contractual. There's not a whole lot you can do about anything.
Correct.
I'll be right back.
I think the question is, were they estimated correctly and in trend going forward? Are there any of these that we know will trend upward or downward that could be adjusted, right? So, but yeah, like payroll tax, you don't control that whatsoever, although
I mean, assuming you're not changing headcount, if you add people here, you're gonna subtract them somewhere else.
That is correct.
So it's, you know, are they concerned about departmental budgets or are they concerned about total cost? I guess is my question.
I would say more departmental, non-labor costs but there are some things, some pieces to the puzzle in the labor costs that they would like to just have addressed.
Okay.
and you know, naturally, if there are, take payroll taxes, although you don't control it, you estimated last year 20,000, spent 13, and now we're halfway, well, we're 40% through the fiscal year, is that what we said?
Yeah.
About,
At
yeah.
5,000, which would
Payroll taxes, I think we're probably, we may have overestimated slightly.
so if some of your direct salary costs, so you show the savings of 25, but you're saying those were applied elsewhere. Do the associated labor costs go elsewhere as well? In other
Yes.
words,
Yes,
okay.
it's a percentage of the
So-
salaries.
So that 32% of payroll tax is not necessarily savings. It goes with that
Right.
25%
That is
savings to
correct.
the other
100%
categories.
correct.
Okay,
So essentially what you're saying to me is salaries, if we look at our salaries, the actual is 160, we've got it budgeted for 251, and we've only spent 50.
What was line, one more time?
Our budget, the adopted budget was 251.
Right.
All right, last year's was 160, so I assume we've moved some people into that group, yet we've only spent 80%.
So we haven't moved anyone into this, however, we have, salaries have changed again due to the contractual, MOU. And we are still hiring for this, we're still waiting to hire for some of these positions.
Right, but we still got 80% of the budget.
That is correct, because we have people that are still just not hired.
So these salary amounts are based on if we were to hire someone at a step A, like at the bottom of the scale. Normally, when we have a vacancy, I just type in the bottom of the scale, so it inputs something,
I get it. How many
so that
people?
we have that marker there for when we do hire someone, and it just really depends on.
We're
how
down
long it
two?
takes.
We're down to,
Out of a total manpower of what, 4? 6?
oh, well, so this is,
Oh, I understand that question correctly.
so we're down 2 out of 17. That's for the whole maintenance department. They're all allocated differently into these departments, so.
Got it.
If I were to tell you, if you were to put all the guys in this room, I'd say he's worth 20%, he's
Got
worth 10%.
Yeah, no, I got it, understood.
And I have those, that it's all an Excel formula, so each job title, position, and what percentages they float across all the departments. If you care.
Well, now we're getting so far down in the weeds.
Mhm.
It seems to me, are
Under the
they,
bottom of the weeds.
exactly, is the board concerned about these numbers aren't correct, or are they concerned about overall costs? So I go back to that question. If it's allocated the way it's allocated, it's still gonna be the overall cost at the end of the day.
I would say everything above the subtotal line can't really be manipulated other than honing in on standby and overtime.
That's the only two things you have control over.
Yeah.
You can deny overtime and you can deny some.
We could not
Standby.
deny overtime
Because
or
it's
standby.
emergency based.
Standby is
Standby
contractual,
is contractual,
and overtime is required because of the nature of our business.
right? But you could theoretically hire somebody else as opposed to spending that additional amount in overtime. When you look at overtime costs, you look at, does it make sense to pay your premium for overtime versus hiring somebody else?
Well, and I think most of the overtime
And it-
hours, and Adam can back me up, are emergency
Right.
based. It's
And-
not that they're working more hours in a day because we don't have enough people.
Right.
It's call out.
It's they're all working at the same time throughout the night, trying to get breaks fixed.
And that's why I said I looked at the percentage, and the
Yeah.
percentage of overtime is so low, it doesn't make sense. It's not a manpower issue. It's just a question of emergencies and using it if it's necessary.
Some of the standby pay, like, in 5,300, 5,400, it's over. And in others, we have extra, so maybe that's just equalizing, or,
Yes, I think you're absolutely correct in
Okay.
your analysis there.
Okay.
I,
are we
okay.
going to equalize? I mean, is that a recommendation they wanna hear, since they're going department by department? And they-
I would say the reason for the noticing of that is that we have people who are in other departments who are picking up the slack when we have these people that are down. And it's our formula not catching up to that. So it will equalize itself once we hire the new people.
Okay,
But if I were to be honest, I would say, they wanna look at this materials and supplies and,
Mhm.
we, obviously, that's a big one where we budgeted 17,000 and only spent 5,000. And the best estimate I can say is a lot of that got allocated into some of the mosquito response stuff that we've been doing. Adam, is there any other things that maybe didn't get allocated there that
You
we
can also
originally?
look at consolidated expenses, and it puts all the departments into one line.
that's nice, okay.
And I don't have a percentage there of budget remaining, but I'm gonna add it for next time.
Okay,
I think for 51 for material and supplies, we use, in preparation for season, we'll see that number. We'll start using more of that account, during season, it's small stuff to keep, customers flowing, but once you get out of season or construction time, we spend more of that on material and supplies to get maintenance and services ready.
consolidated expenses includes the wastewater portion as well, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
So the other one on here, that is of note is the vehicle maintenance, and so, you know, that's a hard one to always kind of pinpoint. So we're 62% over, last year from what we originally budgeted for, so we did, increase that. Those are always areas of very hard to, pinpoint, because we don't know what breaks and what's going to break.
should, should I suggest that we look at the consolidated one, because so many of these questions are, you know,
Sure.
it's under here in this fund, but it's over on this, and
I also
it's
just wanted to
get the full
mention
picture in the consolidated one.
that in the workers' comp line for
Yeah.
fifty-one
Yeah.
hundred, it's supposed to be 77,909.
Oh, okay, so that's an
It's a
error. It
typo.
wasn't- Okay,
Oh, good.
7,900,
That's much better.
okay.
7,910.
Did that typo carry over into the consolidated one?
My God.
It doesn't look like it. Well, yeah, it does actually.
Should,
It did. It's
Yeah.
111,000.
so just take 79,000 out of that, or 72,000. I'll fix that.
Because it worked. I mean, if you look at salaries, we're pretty close to spot on in salaries. When we budgeted, we're, you know, slightly over, or excuse me, slightly under by about 60,000. The new budget number again is MOU related. Part-time, you can see that total, we're at 20K,
Mhm,
and we're under total part-time at 18,449.
mhm.
Overtime, again, we're under, so as you said, yes, it all does kind of even out in the end. The only one I noticed that was above is the retiree benefit, and I will tell you that we have really had a hard time of going through that. And I'll give Jessica a ton of credit, she's been reworking a broken system from, if she wants to go into explaining it, that the way it was being paid out, this has been an issue that you guys have board has brought up in the past. It was not being done correctly, and we had to fix a broken system.
It was being allocated correctly within the general ledger. The payments themselves are correct. We're charging them the correct amount, they're getting their correct benefit amount, we're paying the correct amounts. It just wasn't speaking with the system. We had multiple contracts, retirement contracts, so there's a group that gets a certain amount of benefit, there's another group that gets a lesser certain amount of benefit. We have one retiree that gets full benefits, and they were being separated in the GL when they should have all been in the same place, and there should have just been one line for district cost. And then the retiree fund is where we pay their benefit. So it wasn't, I couldn't figure out why it had been done that way, so I just fixed it.
Okay.
Because it was wrong.
Can we back up, cause I wanna make sure I'm reading this right. It looks like we're over on part-time, but but we're below under salaries, because we don't have full-time people. See what I'm looking at? Salaries, you're running at 66% remaining budget, you should be closer to.
Are you on consolidated?
Yeah, we're looking at consolidated.
So part-time, the account for part-time employees just means temporary staff. So when we get labor force, people to fill in those.
Right.
Because we do need the
Yeah,
manpower,
we don't
the
have any part-time
manpower,
employees.
people power.
No, that's,
Um,
you're right, I understand.
So they're not technically part-time, they're full-time, but we
Right.
put the temporary staff under part-time salaries.
Right, so if you got job openings, they have to be filled with, I mean, if somebody wants to say, well, you've already spent 30, your budget's 20, you've already spent 30, it's because you don't have full-time people.
Yeah, we
And
don't have,
And you're under your budgets. If you look at your salary budget, you're under for salary right now.
correct. And that's because we're allocating to the part-time temporary as opposed to the full-time salary.
Exactly right, yeah.
Is it just a hiring, it just takes a while to hire, or?
It's a
you're
small
not-
it's a small job pool up here, so unfortunately, like, we've had the one water treatment operator, we flew that position for the first time, I believe it was 4 months, and we hired one person. He decided he wasn't a good fit for the position, so he left, and we then flew it again, and it was another 2 to 3 months. So yeah, it's just really hard to find certificated employees, and that's one of the biggest challenges we have up here.
Okay.
So.
I see what you're saying. We've got a lot remaining on all these budgets, so they wanna reduce the budgets thinking this year.
I mean, technically, our salaries spreadsheet that has all of our contracted MOU positions and the salary scales, that's what it should be, but it's less because we had vacancies.
And when you fill those vacancies, the numbers are
Then
gonna
it's
go
gonna go
back
back
up.
up. Mhm.
So the question is the manpower correct? Is your manning numbers correct? Not so much what your costs are, right? At least the way I see it. Cause it looks like you're right on for all your costs based on what you have as far as your manpower. Now, I understand it looks like there's a lot that is not being spent, our budget is over what the actuals are. But it seems to me when you get these positions filled, it's gonna catch you sooner or later. I mean, whether you use temporary employees or whether you have full-time employees, sooner or later, it's gonna catch you. So I guess what I'm saying, the suggestion to go back over and look at the budget, reduce the budget because we're running actuals behind what the budget is probably does not make a lot of sense if you're gonna fill those positions. Does that make any sense to you guys?
100%. I agree with you 100%.
And the board does not understand that? I mean, I'm just being critical here, guys. It seems to me, does it make sense to you guys?
If I could
I think
take a
too,
stab at how I understand the board's request of us and one of our key missions. The board is facing decisions on raising rates, which are always unpopular, right? And I think they have turned to the finance committee and said, if we're gonna make this,
Okay.
this controversial and unpopular vote to raise anybody's rates, because nobody wants that. We want to know that the finance committee has looked over this thoroughly and, made recommendations on what can, or if there can be any areas in here that can be reduced, which would then translate to lower rates. So far, I'm not seeing much opulence in here that can be cut, but I do want to keep going down the line.
I agree with you, but all I'm saying is the stuff above the line. All right, now you're getting this stuff. The wages and salaries, if your manning's correct, you've got a unionized workforce, there's not a whole lot of discretion. You guys don't have discretion unless you want to take on the unions.
No, and I
And I don't
probably,
think I don't think the board wants to do
That's
that.
not.
I think we're reviewing it line by line, but the areas that there are discretion are gonna be
It's
below.
down below
Yeah,
that.
below.
Right.
So I mean, we could start there, like, you're 100% correct in your assessment that basically anything above that yellow bar there in the middle is not really something we have any control over. But if you go below materials and supplies, so you can see that last year we budgeted about 293,000. We spent about 263,000. So we noticed that, that's pretty close.
Mhm.
We had a few things from the fire that we thought we were gonna do that we didn't do. We actually, instead of going up in that area, we went down to 287, 925, and just so you know how we as a staff budget, and this is what I've challenged them all to do, is don't look at what you did last year and just copy paste, add a percentage and go from there.
Okay.
Let's actually look at what we're using, what we need and what we plan to do and come up with a number. So it's it's gonna be a new number every year. And I hate that, well, if you didn't use it, you're gonna lose it. I feel like if we have to go up in some areas and down in some areas, as long as at the bottom line, we're evening out in the bottom line, that's where we wanna be. So obviously, so you can see here where we're going much lower. The next one is durable goods and rentals. So that was originally budgeted for 31,000. We spent about 24,000. Now, you'll notice a big drop in what we think we're gonna need in the future, and that's 13,900. Now, there's a reason for that. We got a lot of new equipment. We got 2 new pieces of equipment from a grant that we won. So that can take up a lot of that rental that we got.
Mhm.
We bought a new dump truck. We
Mhm.
bought another new dump truck. So we have 2 brand new to us
New to
dump
us.
trucks. So we have a beautiful 10-wheeler. We have a really nice 550. So we don't need to rent a dump truck anymore. We are set in those markets.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things we had to do for rentals. We also are purchasing a couple pieces of equipment for the zone. That is a pumping machine. We haven't done it yet, but we plan to purchase it through the CIP program. and that is a large rental that we do. And so right now, this is just emergency rental stuff, not actual like work everyday rental stuff, which is what we were doing before. So that's one of the big decreases there. Moving forward, we have office supplies. I mean, we spent a little bit more in office supplies than we budgeted for last year, so we tried to meet somewhere in the middle at 23,600. Which is about a 10% increase over the last year, but we we're still about 63% left, which is, right on track for that. Safety, PPE safety is 25,600. We spent about 21, and we're budgeting now for 32.5. If we went back and looked at some of the actual line items, I believe we're replacing some of our equipment. We have to replace some of our testing stuff. We also are purchasing what they call what are we calling this thing? The valve exerciser. Hydrant buddy. It's a thing, it's actually a motorized thing that opens valves without human. One of the biggest injuries in the water industry is some guy going like this and turning a valve with a manual turning thing because they tweak their backs.
Right.
And so this device goes in there and it kind of slowly does this number to the valve and it turns it a little bit more, until it does valve exercising to make sure that they don't rust to each other. Software and licenses. Maybe if Jessica wants to, you could say what was more. I know that we had a whole bunch of stuff that we had to allocate in there. So just so you're aware, software and licenses is now its own line item simply because of a GASB a standard on,
I don't know if it's 75 or 68, but everything that is a software or a license has to be reported. So instead of having to pay through that at the end of the year and develop a report, we just have a line item for it, so everything gets allocated there, and then we just run one report. But the reason why it's gone up also is because there were things that we didn't think were a software or a license that Gatsby was saying that, yes, this is considered a software license and needs to be included in the report. So now all of that gets allocated, and we hadn't planned on that. And then we did beef up our Microsoft Office licenses.
So that's within reason, and we did budget a little bit more. Obviously, we're an ever-changing technological society, so we decided to budget slightly higher, which, this is probably one to keep an eye on to make sure that we judge right on this one, and maybe we did, maybe we didn't.
Yeah, well, those things come in at different times too, so I mean.
Yeah, the Tyler one is a big one.
When does
So,
that hit?
off the top of my head, I don't know, but it's usually spring.
Okay.
And it's for the next year.
Mhm.
So we have two separate Tyler Technology licenses that we do. One of them is a monthly maintenance where they are going in and making sure everything's talking to each other. And then there's the big annual. And it's either fall, it's coming up. I know it's coming up because I know we usually pay it in January. And we split it throughout the year. So they do a calendar year and we're on a fiscal. So every year we split it.
So that's gonna draw that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next line item is vehicle maintenance. You can notice that we overspent by about $3,000, about $2,500. I'll tell you one of the reasons why is we had a really old dump truck here that was from 1991. And I think we spent about $5,000 on it in 1 year, in 1 year's time, trying to fix it and keep it on the road. We just had a conversation about why we don't need rentals anymore. Well, we've replaced that dump truck with much better equipment that is much more reliable and won't require as much maintenance. So we have reduced the amount of maintenance about 4%, and we surplus that vehicle out, and it is no longer part of our fleet. So that is the stuff that we can do kind of we can purchase a piece of equipment and we can see less vehicle maintenance.
So this is one area where we could reduce that.
Potentially a little bit more, but again, it's hard with vehicle maintenance. We still have an aging fleet. We have some newer stuff, some aging stuff. And, could we reduce it a little bit more? That's maybe a place to make a recommendation. I wouldn't go considerably much lower, but we obviously could go a little bit lower.
It's just in the overall scheme of things, we're talking about pennies now. In the overall scheme of things.
Like that, like that vehicle maintenance, like,
And-
we just bought a lot of tires for all the trucks, they're probably not on here yet.
Okay.
You know, like they're in the, before winter.
Got it.
You know, so.
Yeah.
I'm fine talking about pennies as we go line by line to understand it. I think there's something to just kind of marinating in all of this and
Sure.
making sure we understand it. And then I think you get down to that bottom line and then you kind of zoom out again and say, does the bottom line make sense as soon as you add it all together? So I'm happy to talk pennies a little bit.
Pennies are fine,
Okay.
we love talking about pennies. Vehicle fuel, you can see that we far undershot on fuel, so unfortunately, fuel was almost $5 a gallon up here. And that is something that's far out of our control. And it's gonna go up
And it's
even
gonna
more.
go up.
So, if anybody hasn't heard, but CARB did vote in, I believe it's a 65 cents per gallon additional charge. So, we probably are under on this one, unfortunately, because that will hit January 1st, and that's a pretty considerable increase in fuel prices.
Is that all fuel or commercial?
It is all fuel.
Great. So it's open.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is, something that we will also have to contend with, and, you know, where we reduce in one area, we also have to make sure that we are increasing in other areas as needed, so.
I was gonna bring it back to vehicle maintenance too, so a lot of our, heavy equipment is under vehicle maintenance. And their annual maintenance doesn't really come up until early in the year usually, so there's gonna be additional costs there coming out of that one as well.
Moving down to building maintenance, so last year, we undershot by about $3,000, we did change out the AC, one of the AC units here. And that was a big thing. We, we also moved some of the building maintenance that we originally had planned into the CIP. We have to do, what is it, the eaves or
Dry rot.
there's some dry rot in the roof that we have to take care of. They put a new roof on, in 2020, 2021, and unfortunately, they didn't do the greatest prep job. So we have to kind of go back and do some re-prep job. So that's before my time though. Professional services, this is a big one.
Yep.
So I will kind of talk through this and explain why the changes. So we did overspend by about 40,000 or so. Now you'll see the new total is 328.
Yep.
The reason that we did this is we pulled the audit numbers out of there. So we are not billing the audit in there anymore. And we also are not billing the accounting folks in there anymore.
Okay,
So
the separate line.
we have a CPA, you can see where it says new in red.
Yep.
That is the one large removal from that. Not the audit, I apologize. I meant to say the CPA, the accounting. So that is the one large removal from that line item is the accounting firm. So you'll see that it's a whole new line item, and this is to track better their costs. This was actually a recommendation from the public so that they could have some transparency on how much we're spending with the auditing firm. If we go back up to the audit, you know, we had a little bit of a extra audit from the 2 previous years that kind of got melded together still. So that's why we spent a little extra, and now we should know what our audits are moving forward. I believe we have 1 year left with our auditing firm with an option year after that, and then we will be going back out to bid for a new auditing firm. So after 25, 26, we should be going back out to bid.
Can you camp back on professional services before you move on a little bit? So
Oh,
what
please,
goes-
please,
What
please.
still goes into the 328 that's remaining in that item? What are the biggies in there?
We
Is anything
moved the
changing?
biggie ones into the CIP.
So what is there? What is that 328?
You have engineer costs, environmental costs, which some of that's in the CIP, but some of the day-to-day stuff is in this consolidated expenses.
So the things you contract for, do you have in-house engineers?
No.
Okay, so all
We have the
engineering,
contract engineer.
okay.
Some of it comes out of CIP and some of it comes out of operating.
Mhm.
When we have smaller projects that are not CIP worthy, we still have to use them, and we use our environmental, we have environmental concerns, that's all coming out of the operating budget. And then when it turns into a project, then we can pay it out of the CIP.
Okay. But anything that needs to be engineered day to day, anything, environmental compliance.
There's also just like, for example, like, we have a professional service that does like, our gauge monitoring, that's under there. There's all kinds of little ones here kind of go into it, but those are the kind of the major ones, I think.
I could go print it out right now if you want.
Cause I guess, given our task, which is to see if there is any, haircut to be had on any of this before the board correlates this to a new rate, that would be one, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
We
we
kind
could-
of have to rely on you to say what goes into it.
Would you mind printing, she's gonna print out a list of what is in that account.
Mhm.
That would be helpful, because it looks like you've already cut it. I mean, we're running, last year was 610 and you're down to 490.
328.
328
No, no,
plus the
no,
one
plus the
sixty,
160.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, so, some of it was removed in the CIP, so our grant writer, our, water no, the water transfer was not grant writing, because that can be built into CIP. It's right here, hang on, it was, some engineering, some environmental, our federal advocacy and our grant writing was moved into there. Because those are all utilized to get grants and funding for our projects. So that's 48,000 was, Vectus, our federal advocate, 20,000 is our grant writer, 30,000 of engineering and 7,500 of E-Core, which is our environmental compliance.
How much for the lobbies?
48,000.
So you're about where you were last year, about 610. So. You moved.
Oh,
into
yes,
CIP,
yes, yes,
but I'm
yes,
just-
yes,
I'm
yes,
just
it's
saying-
all the same, yes. While she's printing that out, we can put a pin in that and come back to that one.
Okay.
And we can look at board travel, so board travel is, they have a set amount of travel that they can utilize, about 3,500 each to travel, to go to conferences, to do what they need to do. So obviously we didn't spend that much last year, but this is an allocated amount that we have basically put into policy that they can utilize. Again, the accounting line is something new, and that is per their contract, so they, $160,000 a year is the contracted amount that we have to
Right,
spend with them.
right.
Staff travel, so we came pretty close. I have increased that budget a little bit because we have some, extra training and extra travel, and we also have some, college reimbursements that are coming out of there, so the tuition reimbursements will be coming out of that area as well. And we do have one, employee that is utilizing that. Also, Adam has started a leadership training course that was a larger expense for, sort of looking for here. No, what's the, after me? Succession planning, sorry. When I leave someday. So that is something that we have, put into the budget to make sure that there's a little bit extra budget for those two different projects. And, the tuition is 3,000 per fiscal year, so we have one currently utilizing that, and, that was part of the increase.
What's the total number of full-time staff again?
27, including me, 27? All right.
Okay.
Utilities, this is mostly PG&E. If you were living under a rock last year, they hit us with a 19.2% increase.
We were living under the same rock as you, I think. We all got hit by the same rock.
Meteor.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that is, the increase in cost there. Again, this is something that we don't have a lot of control over.
Are we
do-
running pretty close though, Nick? I mean, I'm looking, you still got 69% remaining.
I
Did we get it right?
I think we're getting it right.
Okay, good.
And then just for the committee's awareness is we're still working on building a solar project at Sweetwater Treatment Plant. That would help offset about 225 to 250 of that total cost. So, the return on the investment that we've worked on is anywhere between 7 to 11 years, depending on the size of the system we put in.
Okay.
So that is something that we are looking at, utilizing to kind of offset some of those costs. So you can see, we could go back to professional services, unless there's any questions on utilities.
No, could I ask, would it be a practical thing to add? Oh, I do have one question, but back to professional services, would it be appropriate to put this sheet in the minutes?
Yeah, we absolutely can, absolutely, absolutely.
I'll ask
And then
for that
Adam
to be
will-
added to the
Copy to
minutes.
Liz and she can,
Why do we have to pay Cal Fire?
we pay Cal Fire to do work for us, so they go
Oh,
out
these
and
are the-
do weed trimming and
Okay.
burning.
And they're a deal.
They're, yeah, we
You
pay
get a
them,
These
lot
are the
for
guys
your
we
money.
talked about,
we
okay.
pay them about $200 a day and they come out.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is, you get them as much as you can get them. They're,
yeah, I agree, they do a lot of work around our treatment plants, they'll do burning, they'll do, you know, I mean, they do everything. Only thing we can't do with them is put them on a canal near a house, and so that's where we have to be really careful. So
Or
we
near a
put them
school.
up in the uninhabited areas of the district and call it a day.
And then Adam and I will have to go over the descriptions for 5,400 because we
Okay.
budgeted 11,000 and it's only showing a definition for 2,500. I know it's correct because we were pulling all of the CEQA and Bennett Engineering and everything out, so it probably just didn't get put in there. But these aren't. We don't know where to share them until budget
there-
season, so.
Is there a reason they're blue and red and purple? And-
Blue means they went down, red means they went up from last year.
Oh, okay, and then purple?
I think it's blue.
Or you
Oh.
see, oh yeah, I think it's because of the green behind it.
Utility.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I don't know why.
Green and blue made purple apparently.
okay.
Yeah, so if you look, the top line, 5,100, Adam had mentioned that those are kind of the things that we have to do, the gauge monitoring, right, those are all operating costs that we have to do with the dam reporting. Bennett is our engineer, that's our contract engineer. Cal Fire, we did increase that by $1,000 or so to have them, again, utilize more. Again, in 5,200, so the difference between 5,100 is generally 5,100 is anywhere from Stumpy to the tunnel, and then, you know, to the bottom of the tunnel. And then 5,200 is anywhere below the tunnel that would go out any of the other irrigation canals. So obviously, we still have a main ditch canal that goes to the two different water treatment plants. But 5,200 is kind of anything else that's a feeder line that goes off of those canals. 5,300 is our water treatment, so that would be the two water treatment plants. And A team, they do like troubleshooting on the computer system, they do they fix lighting for us, we have motion lighting, we've put in hot water heaters, all kinds of stuff with them. Holt is, we have a huge generator down at the Sweetwater treatment plant, and we have a smaller one up at the Walton treatment plant that require a yearly service, and so the generator at Sweetwater is bigger than this room. So that's why it's a considerable size of a contract. And if you see Infinity Tech GIS, I think, I don't know if that's self-explanatory, but GIS is Geo Informational Services, and that's basically mapping. And we use that for our guys when they go out to do the cartograph service. They can take their little tablet and they can stand on where they made the repair and go like this, and it records exactly where they are on the earth, and it goes into our mapping for like an as-built for the future. Big one for 5,600 is, you know, we have document destruction, our financial advisors, so those are our investment partners.
Right.
IT services, that's a gentleman that we have that comes up here and works when he does, those are contracted hours, so I think he's contracted for like 60 hours, and if he uses them, then we pay up front, and when he uses them all up, then we repay. So sometimes it goes 18 months before you have to redo it, sometimes it goes 12 months, sometimes it goes 2 years. So that's a unique service that he offers us. Office cleaning, so we had to change our office cleaner to a new one because the other people quit on us. Pest control, we actually are looking for a pest control person right now, so that's not being spent. Pre-employment screening, that's drug testing. Cost of service, so that is one that won't be here again, that's the rate study. So that,
Okay.
that $50,000 will go away and we'll be able to reduce after this year.
So in terms of making recommendations for like overall distributed costs year over year, that could potentially be, and we have to do that every 5 years?
Every 5 years.
So that could potentially on a year by year basis be estimated at 10,000 a year.
I would say we're probably gonna still spend some money with them, so having some
Well-
analysis and continued analysis is what the board has said. They wanna make sure that when we get the rates right, when we do the rates, we wanna do them right and make sure that we're not
Sure.
overcharging the customers. So we will likely continue to have him on contract to some extent to continue to take a look at our rates every year.
But at a
But
lesser
not at
amount.
50,000.
Oh, far less, far
Yeah.
less.
So if it was 5,000 in the off years and 50,000 every 5 years, whatever that math comes out to be more like averaging about 12,000 a year.
12.5 probably, yeah.
Okay.
Tyler, the two Tylers are the accounting software that we utilize. InfoSend utility billing, that is who sends out our bills every month, every 2 months. And our water transfer, consultant is the person who helps us basically through the process of all of the paperwork of doing the water transfer. And then moving into 6,100, so that's the zone. We have the JW monitoring, and so those are monitoring wells that we have to have them come in and look at, monitor. These are for the water quality to make sure that we're not over saturating the ground with nitrates. We have emergency spills, CDS maintenance. Again, we have a generator down there, so we have to have a generator service. And then if you notice the last line there is rate study, and that was the 45,000 for the same rate study. So half of the rate study went to the wastewater, half of it went to water.
Okay.
And again, that will be something that we will pull out and kind of keep reassessing, probably at a much lower rate for them. I would say more likely $5,000, because it's after the first year, we will be able to not have as large increases moving forward.
Where's the lobbyist that you mentioned in here?
So that is under the CIP program.
Okay,
It's under, if you take in your binder, the packet you have, and you go back 2 pages, I believe. It should be
backwards, yeah,
right,
okay.
that one right there. See those red words?
Mhm.
On your left page, yeah.
Mhm.
See the red words? Anything that was written in red was something that was recommended to take from the budget and put into the CIP by the board and you all at last year's budget meeting. So the second from the last on the top part is Vectus, that's our federal advocate.
And it's 48,000 a year, so you're paying them
It's 4,000 a month.
4,000 a month. So tell me about that, because a scope for a lobbyist is necessarily hard to pin down because they have to be nimble. They're paid to keep abreast of things, to be in rooms advocating for legislation. So tell me, what do we get for $4,000 a month? Are you satisfied that we're getting?
We've gotten 1.25 million of guaranteed money and $20 million that will probably be signed before the end of the year.
Do you feel like they give you, are they also kind of scoped with making sure you're aware of upcoming legislation to respond to, things like that?
So we get a monthly update, and then I get personalized updates along the way every month that are included in our board reports, or we have a legislative board report. So yes, they keep us very abreast of what is happening. I would say some months they work $6,000 and some months they work $2,000. So it works out in the end. Obviously, there's quiet times of the year. But they're definitely giving us, the return on the investment for this is far and away positive.
Do you think you could tie what they're doing for the district to a large percentage of the grant funding that you receive?
Yes.
Thank you. Because that is the
We
key
wouldn't
to,
even have known about the $20 million that we were hoping to get within the next few weeks if it wasn't for them.
yeah, because you do have to tie the value of a lobbyist to the deliverables at the end of the day.
And federal lobbying is a lot different than state lobbying. I mean, we're not lobbying individual bills typically, we're lobbying people. We're lobbying committee people. So we're not lobbying the legislators, we're lobbying the people who are telling the legislators what to do.
No, I thought that was the people.
We're lobbying the.
Well, there's some people are more important than other people.
Silly me.
And to Andy's comment too, same thing with your optimum, as far as your return, the work. there,
Yeah,
as far as
yeah,
return,
I mean-
cause he's right. I mean, every time you go through, now these are discretionary things. These are the kind of things that people will say, well, are we getting the benefit for what we're paying now? And those are the kind of things that you wanna make sure that you can justify, and, you know.
We're still averaging over 4% of a return, I mean. And they're making sure that we're nice and laddered and continuing on and that everything is above board and. You know, it's the peace of mind of having the third party. And not to say that I would do anything wrong, but I can look and say, this is what we're being recommended to. I would never want to put that in Jessica's shoes or my shoes
I
or
agree.
the board's shoes. You know,
I
we
agree.
need to, I hate to use the word scapegoat, but it's the fall guy. It's the person who's saying, hey, this is the recommendation. And so it's worth every penny to have that recommendation, that expertise on board.
I agree. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, as far as board training and travel and staff development, I'm a supporter of both of those two things because I think it ends up making you more efficient and understanding more, making you more professional. And, you know, those are easy things that people can blow out. And I would recommend against it because again, we're back at pennies and I think you're getting a benefit for those things. So to the extent that I'm speaking on my behalf now, I think they're worthwhile things to keep in a budget.
I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I learn something new every day. I guarantee it.
Yeah. You go to those conferences and stuff, you typically do.
Well, I work more there than I do when I'm here in the office.
Before we leave, final question, unless there's any others, on professional service. So you did, like the cost of service analysis and rate study, those are cyclical and landed in this year's budget. Are there any other cyclical things that didn't happen to be on this year's budget that will be next year or the year after?
Yeah, next year we'll be doing the urban water management plan. Well, we'll start the process of that. So 2026, July 1st, 2026 is when the urban water management plan will be due. So we will start to put out RFPs and looking for a consultant to help us with that. I don't foresee that being, I hate to say a number, but 25,000.
Okay.
So it's not gonna be to the same level. We do not need to do that. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mitch is calling me because it seems as though he has a question online and I
Oh.
apologize.
Do we have a hand up that I haven't been watching for? Sorry about that.
Ignore me.
Director McDonald, my apologies for not keeping an eye on you out there. Can we hear you?
Hello, Houston. Yes, excellent meeting. I love it. You guys are on top of it, all over it. Can you hear me? Probably.
Yes,
We
we can
can.
hear you great.
Okay. Yeah, excellent analysis from you guys, the Finance Committee, of the breakdowns, the anomalies, noted fluctuations, variations, trends, deviations from the stated budget projections. I mean, you guys are all over it. I'm in agreement with all these items you're bringing up from this member of the board. So I'm thankful and grateful that you guys are out there keeping us on the straight and narrow and bringing up these items that we may overlook while we're focusing on this. We can't always keep an eye on that. So I'm just glad you're out there, and I'm very supportive of this committee. And I know the rest of them, the board members are also. Just a few things to comment on. For instance, gasoline, right? We're going to have an immediate, I don't know how immediate, but 65 cent per gallon tax. That might be somewhat offset by drill baby drill over the next few years. There'll be an increase in commodity availability, which will somewhat offset that in the first year. But over the next couple of years, we might find more than $1, maybe $2 per gallon decrease. But that was a good point you made. That'll be an immediate increase to our costs. But I think in the second year, we might find some savings. And in the budget for fuel. As far as commodity cost, well, that's before my commodity cost, at a 19.2% increase in PG&E, that's a doubling every 3.75, basically 4 years. So that's no small potatoes, but just to make you aware, in Rule of 72, that's a commodity that will be doubling approximately every 4 years at that rate. We're in the part of the business cycle where commodity priced inflation is going to start taking off, and gold and silver as a leading economic indicator up 40% this year. And the Federal Reserve has started lowering interest rates, not because they are thinking about lower commodity price costs and costs of doing business. That was more an election ploy. If you look at shadow statistics, if you keep the same metrics as they did in 1980 to monitor the actual consumer price index, the true cost of consumer prices is closer to 7 and 8%, not 3. And they changed the metrics. For instance, removing coffee and replacing it with tea, because tea isn't going up as much. So they replaced that last November. Washing machines don't last 20 years anymore. You have to replace them more often now. So what's another thing there? Taxes back then weren't added into the consumer price index. Now that we're adding more taxes and fees to the, we're not adding in the taxes and fees to the cost of purchasing. You have to add those in these days. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that we are aware of what the staff, this board is aware of the staff, and put heavy weight into what their recommendations are as the real cost of doing business. And in the previous boards didn't use the cost of the service as much as they were asset valuations and replacement cost. So anyway, I just wanted to say that thank you for the work you do, and keeping your recommendations founded in the true cost of doing business and not so much on your beliefs on what you think or would like things to be, is more what you know they are to be based on historical trends and patterns. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. And
Thank you,
one more
Director.
thing. One more thing about the investments. The real money, the smart money, saw that the short-term interest rates were being lowered for political reasons to justify the current incumbent. So they raised long-term rates, which secures in our bonds and treasury notes and CDs. They should not be going down much at all this year, because they offset the Federal Reserve's lowering interest rates, because they know commodity prices will be going up. And so we should be getting a decent rate of return moving forward this next year, even though we had a short-term lowering this summer. So I feel pretty confident about the district's income over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McDonald.
Please feel free to call me if we're ignoring you again, by the way.
I did want to, on the topic of utilities, I did want to ask, do we have any news on the horizon about potential things like solar for offsetting utilities?
Yeah,
Progress being made there.
We are currently working with a company now that has, we anticipate some revenue coming in, an unanticipated revenue source. And we are likely going to put some of that towards building the solar field at Sweetwater, which would help to offset the 225 to 250,000 or so yearly bill that's there. We also are anticipating putting some solar here at the office to help offset our costs here. Luckily, there's 2 meters on this property, so we can get a little bit of the older benefits from them. And we're also exploring a percentage system at Walton, we probably will not be able to offset full cost at Walton, just because we don't have a lot of available space.
Mhm.
But we can offset 40, 60, 50% or so.
Okay.
So yeah, we are exploring those.
Okay,
Bank charges, so this is gonna change pretty considerably, and actually it will become a net benefit to the district. And we're just starting to do the changeover. A couple months ago, the board approved us to utilize a new bank, so we're gonna be utilizing River City Bank, which is, it's out of, Sacramento, but there's a branch in Placerville that we can utilize. They offer a high yield checking. So we can actually put our money and put it to work. So it will be put to work at a, between 3% and 5% interest rate. And we will offset all of our bank charges. Now, $3,000 isn't a lot, but we're anticipating being able to make anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000 off of this money that just kind of sits there, as opposed to having it just sit there. It's
Right.
something that the district realized was a stranded asset of sorts.
Good.
Payroll processing fees, we don't have any control over that one. That is just, we have a company that we utilize and they tell us what it's gonna be, so we utilize a company called ADP. And they bill us once a year. Government regulation fees, now, this is a little bit weird. We get billed different times for our dam inspection report. Sometimes we get billed 2 times in 1 year. Sometimes we get billed no times, and so we won't get billed, and then we'll get billed here and here before the end of the calendar year. So sometimes they don't always cross over, right? And that's why there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. We did just get the billing for Walton, the water rights, which was like 60 grand, and so that's why we're pretty well on track. I don't think that this is one that we can really change a whole lot of, unfortunately. Elections. Hey, there's one where we can change. We
Yeah,
didn't have an
that.
election. We didn't have an election, so we don't have to spend the $9,500 for the election. So luckily, we went unopposed for both Director Thornborough and Director McDonald, and we saved the district the $10,000. And so this is already on our radar to present to the board for. We have a budget. What do we call that?
Amendment.
Budget amendments. We will do that in February. Other miscellaneous expenses.
This is a catch-all where we put things that we can't, like we had one employee who was served on jury duty. And so they have to sign over their jury duty pay to the district because they received their salary while they're serving jury duty as part of the MOU. So that's where that money, that check was in there, because we don't have a jury duty revenue account. So we use that, and that's how for things that don't have a place, the puzzle piece that doesn't fit, that's where we came up with the recruitment and publications, new accounts. Because it was, once it gets to a certain level, we're like, okay, we should probably start tracking this if we're gonna be doing it more often. And it doesn't fit into any little box, so when you see that, that's random, and it's a catch-all. And then we figure out at the end of the year if we wanna create a new revenue stream or add liability or something off of the stuff that ends up in there.
Good.
Memberships and subscriptions, this is Aqua, CSDA. We also are a member of MCWRA. We are a member of RWA. Sorry. No, you're good. AWWA. There's several associations that we are members of that do advocacy, that do trainings, all kinds of stuff. So
Or
that's what.
Aqua JPIA.
Yeah, oh.
Insurance.
What is that? A regular insurance?
There, we have a membership with them as well, so
Oh.
they do all the trainings and
Got it, yeah.
things like that.
So those are all of the trade associations that we belong to. The low income rate assistance program, so you'll notice that we spent 14,000 there. I have a feeling this one's gonna go up. And we may have to allocate more money into this program. As part of the rate study, we are now offering 50% of your base rate off as opposed to 25%. So the base rates are gonna go up, and we're actually gonna be increasing the amount of offset that we're gonna offer. So that will be for anybody who has a 5/8, 3/4, or 1-inch meter. If you can prove that you are a low income earner, then we will offer you the 50% base rate reduction. So I think $72 is the base rate for a 5/8 meter, and you can get $36 off as opposed to the $15 that we used to offer.
And that's a program that's already been adopted by the board.
It has been adopted, but it will have to be adjusted because of this change. So we're gonna have to allocate more money into that program because of the greater amount of people that will take advantage of it, plus
Like
the
the board
greater
made the
expense.
threshold 35,000.
Yeah.
We've never reached it, but there's a potential for us getting closer.
The estimation from our rate consultant was 50 in the first year, 60 in the second year. And that's money that comes out of our property tax allocation, so it's not, doesn't come out of the rates, it's special kind of fund. You can't subsidize people's rates with other people's rates, so this is definitely some of those non-enterprise funds that we get. The two bottom ones, you can see those are also new, so recruitments and publications. So recruitments is with all the, we've had some turnover, but a lot of it is, artificial turnover, people moving. We had two lead positions get created last year. We did have a couple people that left. We have a couple people that are gonna be retiring soon, so, we're trying to figure out how we backfill, but we wanted to make sure we could track those recruitment costs. And the final one is publications, and this is gonna be our newsletter and any other kind of
Noticing.
intermittent noticing that we send out. I will make note that it's not in here, it is part of the, I think it's part of the COSA study, but we have to spend almost $12,000 to send out the public hearing notices. The pages was 7 pages, and we had to pay extra for the postage and the printing, and so that was a large publication cost that is associated with the cost of service analysis. So, you can look at the bottom that, we were under budget. Obviously, we weren't under budget by a lot. Couple, 20,000, 25,000 or so, because, when you say the bottom line, I think we did pretty good on, meeting our bottom line. You do notice that next year it's gonna go up about 500,000 or so, 600,000. If you look at salaries, the salary tab, it's about $500,000. It increases to the upper part. That's not all salary increases, but that is salary, and then the other things on top of that. So the health insurance goes up every year. The standby pay goes up. When we have salaries go up, payroll taxes go up, not health insurance, the retirement expenses go up, so everything kind of goes up with it. And so I could calculate what the salary increase is. It looks like it's about 250 to 300K, 250 it looks like maybe. And then the rest of that is the other expenses that we don't have any control over on top of that. PERS UAL is a huge one that we have to deal with, and that's our unfunded liability. And that goes up by almost $150,000. That's just because of the length of time people are here, not even salary increases. It's just because when we have a workforce, they're looking at, if everyone here retired from here, how much would it cost this district to pay those people their retirement costs? So, was there any additional questions on the consolidated form? And I know if you guys want to make any kind of recommendations or kind of give us any kind of insights or heads ups that you want us to do differently, then now would be the good time for that.
Had a couple comments, but I'd like to turn to the other members. If there's any.
No, it's just the cost of analysis, the rate study, and then that 9,500 for the elections. Those are the 3 items that I tagged as having some, money we can recapture going forward, but otherwise.
I do want to ask, so in addition to the rates and the board grappling with what the right rate is, what other, on the revenue side of things, what's changed in revenue? Say over this time period that we're looking at, we're seeing Expenditures go up from fiscal year 21-22 from 4.6 to 6.2. Rates will have to absorb some of that, and we're gonna make a recommendation, I think, on how that could be tweaked. I don't see it being huge one way or another, but what are some of the other revenue drivers?
Yeah, so grants and, that's a big one, when we can bring in some of those grants to offset those project costs that we have put into those rates, so they're not rate funded anymore. We do have some, revenue that is, we anticipate coming in within the next month to 4 to 6 weeks. That will considerably help offset these costs, and part of that will be to construct the solar fields. That will help offset this, as well as putting some of that back into our reserve accounts that we've had to take out and continue to realize some more interest income. And what we're hoping to do is, currently the rates are to fund $700,000 in CIP costs. And if we can realize what we hope with this revenue coming in, we should see about 350,000 additional investment dollars to offset that $700,000. So we wouldn't have to put as much rate-driven money into the CIP program, and that would be a huge benefit to the consumer, because they wouldn't have to have as high of a rate. And so some of the analysis that we did at the last board meeting, which was on Monday, is if everything goes perfectly well, the rates look like between 7 and 10% of a rate increase, as opposed to the 15% that's proposed in the rate study. And that's because of the additional revenue that we see coming in.
So we've looked pretty, we've spent almost an hour and a half looking at the operating budgets, the operating items. On the capital side, how much of the capital budget would be affected by rates?
So as I said, the capital budget, we have it broken into 2 different sections. We have the capital budget on the top, which is rate funded, it's actually been reduced a little bit from the number that you see here. This is the adopted budget. And so it's down to about 598, and that is rate adopted. So we've taken a few of these things out. Obviously, we don't see that they're gonna be able to be done this year, and so we've adjusted those down. It averages about $606,000 per year, except for in year 4, which would be 2026 and 2027. At that point, we start to utilize the Castle study. And the Castle study said that we have about $1.4 million in annual CIP costs that the district should be funding. Now, as part of the rate study, we did not include all 1.4 as to be rate driven, because we do anticipate that there will be some money for grants to do some of the infrastructure improvements that are required within the Castle study. So we decided, as a staff and as the consultant, to utilize $700,000 of that for the years 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028. So we took that and cut it in half. That will be rate driven CIP. And then the rest of it will go into our grant funding portion, which is the second part of this. The second page is all the projects that we have anticipated for grants. So these are projects, some of these projects will be part of that rate funded priority. And we can then pull them out of that rate funded, because we'll be having extra money from the rates to spend on these projects. Does that help answer the question? That's
It does, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's maybe one piece of like missing information from this package is what's the anticipated revenue, as we're trying to grapple with what the rate portion is, what are those other pieces of revenue that go into this that offset the rates, so. But no, very good.
I'm not sure, Mitch, is that a hand raised, or are you, I'm not sure. Okay, I just want to make sure we're noticing, Mr. Chairperson, I do believe, Mitch has, can ask a question.
Yes, Director.
I just, before the end of the meeting, I wanted to introduce Mr. Means, who's on Zoom, potentially interested in becoming Finance Committee member. I just wanted to make that intro and have him ask any questions or welcome him to the public viewing before we close the meeting.
Right,
Good.
let me welcome Mr. Means. Glad you could join us. We do have a kind of a catch-all item at wrap up at the end on director or committee member comments. We'll turn to you then, see if you have any comments to add to the meeting. And you're welcome to make any comments you have right now on the budget before us and the rate study if you'd like. So we do have an opportunity to make a motion here. I did just have a couple of observations. I always just kind of look at this budget against the budget I work with in my own professional life. I manage a division of a larger agency that's fairly corollary to the size of this division. So I support about 35 FTEs with a $10 million budget. And so when you drop down to the bottom line, and again, we've looked at all these line items, and then you come down to the bottom and kind of zoom out and say, you know, does that make sense for the size of the organization it is? So you're supporting 27 people, you know, to me, that is a right-sized or lean workforce for what you've got to maintain. You've got a system that's distributed throughout the entire Georgetown divide. You inherently have the issue of a lot of travel time, a lot of linear infrastructure. Some of it's difficult to get to, spread out all over the place. A fairly small ratepayer base for the amount of land area that you serve. You'd have these just inherent, you can't do anything about it, challenges to this district. And I think, you know, a staff of 27 that handles all that is a fairly miraculous undertaking, and you do it year after year. I don't see anything that's not right-sized here or lean. I do appreciate your comment, just in terms of not adjusting this year's budget, but in terms of looking at what that correct rate is. I think if I were to make a motion, I would say you could look at some of these costs that are cyclical and kind of distribute them out over if you didn't need to do it every 5 years for the rate study and stuff. You know, for the sake of looking at the right rate, you might distribute that out rather than accumulated in 1 year. That was the one thing. I don't think that would make a huge difference in the rate, but our job is to go through and make recommendations. And I think that was a fair one to distribute those cyclical costs if they're not, if you're looking at basing the rate on this year's budget, I think those cyclical costs could be distributed.
I mean, we can absolutely look at that. And that's an easy change.
Did you want to comment on the question as we look as the draft fiscal budget?
Yeah,
Did
I
you want to
do.
make a comment?
I do want to make a comment on that. Now, what, I'm looking at the draft fiscal budget. 2024, 2025, it's got fiscal year 17, 18 all the way out. It seems to me the criticism, right or wrong, will be if you look at the increase of administrative customer service, 5,600 between 2017, 18 to current. You're looking at $1 million over 5 years. All right,
I'm not sure I follow.
okay, you went from 1 point.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
I will.
that will be the criticism you'll get. Why the increase?
Well, we married two accounts. When I got here, we had 5,500, which is the one that's in red there, and it seemed redundant to me, so we married that one together.
Administration and customer service were separate.
Right,
So we put those together. So does
Which is still
that answer all the costs? No.
Right.
But there is additional professional service costs that we've had to take on since that time. There's additional insurance requirements that come out of that we can, I would think that we can show you where the differences are, and many of them are outside of our purview.
I'm not being critical.
Oh, I
of
understand.
Management, it's a question of when you look at a rate increase, somebody's gonna say, these are administrative costs, they are not, quote, operating costs. They're not helping me They're office expenses, they're not labor expenses. All right, that's the way people look at these things. So I think it's gonna be incumbent on management to really be able to explain where those costs have increased.
Yep.
Because obviously inflation is gonna be part of it. You've got all the additional expenses that went into the things. I think, based on what I understand, the district is now more, my words, professionally run than in the past. I think that there appears to be more accountability. I have absolutely no issues with the budget and expenses, none. I agree with what Andy says. It seems to be running pretty lean and mean. I don't see a lot of people sitting around. I don't think that we're looking at a palatial office space. I don't think that we have a whole lot of new technology out there. I think you're running pretty lean and mean. That's beside the point when people look at a rate increase.
Sure.
Okay, so those are the only, that's my only comment that struck out to me when you sit there and you look at these things, somebody's gonna say, why the increase? So just be prepared, because I think you've got a good story to tell. It's a tough business to run. It's a very tight, and you know, as we've gone through these, there's not a whole lot of discretion. There's not a lot of waste. And if there was, there's not much, there's just nowhere that you can really make a lot of significant changes. And even the few changes that we talked about moving here and out, you're talking, you know, 2%, 3% of the overall budget. I mean, that's so. That's all I have to say about that. And I appreciate the input. I mean, I really think, I mean, you've got more than I need. I just started going through last year's expenses. I got more than I need here, okay?
Just a little light.
Transparency is not a problem here.
Well, we will do, another analysis likely in January and February, whenever I go look at the calendar and see what dates you're back. I apologize for not knowing offhand. And we will look at what the budget amendments are and have you all sign off on those budget amendments as they come through. And that would behoove us for future year budgets and making sure that we're staying lean, staying mean, we're doing all the things that we need to do. And then when we consider a rate increase in the future, we want to make sure that we're doing right by the consumer and right by the customer. And I feel like this community is an excellent vehicle for that and making sure that we're staying on track.
Wish the Air Resources Board, CARB, had a finance committee that held their board to the fire the way we do. So I don't know if there's an interest in making a formal motion on this. I think, you know, this rate is a big deal. As chair, I can't make a motion, but if somebody were hypothetically to motion that we support, we took a, you know, detailed look at the budget before us. And with the exception of looking at distributing some of the cyclical costs that we support, the board's using this budget as a basis for rates. I would support something like that. That's
So there is nothing stopping you from making a motion.
Oh, really?
There
I
is
thought
not.
a chair could not.
So that's a kind of a Robert's rules. We don't technically use Robert's rules. We kind of use them as guiding lights, but not as driving lights.
You use Bob's rules. Well, if the motion were so made, I would second it. I'll make the motion.
Did you catch that?
I second it.
So how do you all wanna present this motion?
I think the motion was that everything is in order except that cyclical type costs, i.e. cost of service analysis and urban water management planning were divided out between the 5 years to
Yeah.
ensure that all the costs are even throughout the 5 years.
Mm.
Did I get it?
Yeah.
I'm getting the nods. I think I'm good. And then, so
So I
that's,
hear a motion and a second, is that right?
Motion in second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I'll let you go ahead.
So are we, we're up to 6B now,
Yes, sir.
review the adopted fiscal year operating budget. I think we just covered that one pretty darn well.
Yeah.
Are there any, so I will just ask, is there any additional notes particular to, we've looked at it under the lens of the rate study. Anything particular to this operating budget you would want to add?
We, everything that we've asked for, we're getting. We don't need anything else at this time if you're asking me.
Okay. Is there anything here that anybody wants to make a motion on regarding this year's operating budget? I'm not sure that I do.
No,
No,
Okay,
I think the budget's pretty solid.
so just let the record reflect that there was not a interest in a motion on 6B. And then finally, we'll take a look at the finance committee meeting schedule for next year, which is the last page in our packet.
Okay, so the meeting calendar is to not be so onerous on the committee. You are a very highly paid committee. And I want to.
I missed that line item.
It's the psychic rewards that we have.
I want to make sure that we're getting our money's worth out of you all. We kind of went through the calendar and we want to make sure that we're respectful of your time and your expertise, and also respectful of when you want to travel. So some of the things we did was we looked at when we would like to have you as a kind of more required meeting, as opposed to when we think we might be able to kind of have optional or tentative meetings.
Mhm.
So the ones in orange or whatever burnt sienna color that is, those are the ones we'd really like to have you all here. That is for the budget. That would be March, April, May. May being the joint meeting that we typically have with the board. And October would be for the budget review, i.e. what we're doing today. So that's what we would like to do. And then in January is when we would have the tentative audit. So it would be either January or February, depending on how the audit cycle is going. And that also is when we would have our budget amendments presented to you as well. So that you can see and recommend to the board, hey, these are the, remove this, add this, take this off, do that kind of stuff. Those are what we would ask for you all to do. And then kind of in between, so if you would like to meet in July, we can meet in July, or in September, we can meet in September. Generally, the policy states that we have one meeting every quarter. I think if we utilize this schedule, the only time we don't have one scheduled required within a quarter would be the stretch between June and September. So, you're meeting regularly through March, April, May, and if you were to schedule either July or September, you guys would be meeting the requirements of your policy. And if we didn't meet, I think that the board would understand, because that's also not exactly timing for any kind of financial or fiscal news, notes, anything that's going to go happen. So it would also be an apropos time to take a recess if you needed to. So this is what staff came up with, and we'd be happy to take any questions, recommendations. I know there was a comment from member Gorence about one of the meeting dates, and at no time are you required to be here. But if you do have any tentative dates that these will not work for, then we can discuss that as well.
I'd be happy to work on things offline, but I obviously can't be here. I just want to make sure we have a quorum for this.
Sure.
Workshop meetings.
We do have some interest in joining the committee, so hopefully we have some other people that we can bring into the fold and continue to have a little bit of old blood mixed with new blood.
Yeah, I think for me, all these dates, as far as I know so far, and especially being retired, they should work. The one thing about a July meeting, it's always, I kind of leave that in there. I see the tentative there. Because July, we've adopted a budget and you're still closing out the books on the last fiscal year. So it's a little hard to get accurate readings on how things wound up. It can sometimes be a non-productive meeting. So as long as that stays tentative, we're open to it. We'll cross that bridge when we get closer to it, if there's a reason to meet in July.
Yeah, that October meeting is the really important one, because that is when we would have final numbers. So basically, we have until September 30th to finalize all of our budget numbers. And so that October date would be when we would finalize it, have everything, final. Here's what we spent, actual budget numbers.
Okay. Did anyone want to make a motion to adopt the tentative schedule for next year?
Sure, I make a motion, we adopt the tentative schedule.
All second.
Here, a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The tentative schedule is adopted. Before we go to finance committee member comments, I would like to, since we did change our schedule and start earlier, a couple of folks were not here at 2:00. I do want to briefly open up public comment again to see if anybody online has any comments they'd like to add to our meeting today.
And I think Mr. Means is a prospective member, and I do see we have, Ms. Cherie has joined us.
Either of you have any comments? Welcome to unmute and make those comments if you have them right now. You don't need to, but I just wanted to make that opportunity once again. So it looks like I'm not seeing anyone.
Oh, I see. It.
Oh, Mr. Means, did you want to unmute? It does show you as muted. Are you able to, you're not able to unmute?
Oh, there we go.
Push it.
Got it.
There you go.
There we go. Just a quick question. I haven't seen all the financials. I don't have that package, but do you do cash flow projections for the year in your budget?
Yeah, so we do a revenue sheet that we have. Our cash flow is we have what is based on rates, what is based on our property tax, and then what is any kind of penalties or other revenue, and then we have a section for like our interest income. We can I can get over a copy of our budget to you, or if you want to stop by the office, I'd be happy to drop one off so you can take a look at how that sheet works.
Okay, thanks.
And this packet is online.
Oh, and you can actually find, if you wanted to search around on our website a little bit, you can find our budget. It's under, if you go to gd-pud.org, and right on the top, there's a line item that says information and reports. And then underneath it is finance, and the budget will be the first thing after you click on finance, and you can go through the whole thing. And then you can get my phone number from Mr. or Director McDonald, and I'd be happy to take your call or answer any questions you may have on that at any time.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Mr. McDonald, Director McDonald, go ahead.
We met Mr. Means at the Auburn Lake Trails Community Town Hall, and he's the current treasurer of the Auburn Lake Trails Board of Directors. And I found this gentleman very knowledgeable, insightful. I believe he was previous CEO of a Fortune 500. I forgot the name of the company's D or a D, but I don't remember. But very enlightening, very knowledgeable in his field and his area, and I thought he'd be able to bring a lot of out of the box insight and experience, and seemed like it'd be a great fit if it worked mutually for each party. So anyway, I was impressed, and I just invited him to come kick the tires today and see what we're all about. So that's all I wanted to say. I want to thank you, Mr. Means, for stopping by.
Appreciate it. And I work with Steve also on the design committee and Auburn Lake Trails, so I'll have a chance to chat with him about it shortly.
Oh, there you go.
Nice to meet you. Cherie,
Thanks,
did you have
gentlemen.
anything for us today? Not looking like it. Okay, I'm gonna reclose public comment and open it up to finance committee member comments and reports. I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Nothing here either. All right.
Well, I could just add that since we were talking about blood, I think mine's the oldest in the room.
It was not an age, it was a length of time.
I think I qualify there too.
Yeah, you might, you might.
Moving on to number 8, as we're wrapping up, any agenda items, suggestions for the next finance committee meeting?
Audit. Yeah, audit, we'll have that, as soon as we have it, we'll have you guys called, likely January or February is when we would have it.
And then we'll also have the budget amendment too.
Yeah, we do at the same time.
Same auditors as last year?
Okay. According to the tentative schedule we just adopted, our next scheduled meeting will be January 23rd. Do we still, you have it at 3 o'clock. Do we want to shoot for 3 or are you?
I'd like to do
proposing
2
we
if you were
2
okay
o'clock?
with 2.
I'm fine with 2 o'clock.
I am
Okay.
too.
Yep. If it's too much, stress until you're, well, you have a week left, so.
I'm retired then, so 2 o'clock
Well,
is
there we
fine.
are.
So with that, I will say, would you let the minutes reflect that we will be shooting for a 2 o'clock meeting on January 23rd, 2024?
And so this will all be approved by the board, so we, will have that all added
Okay.
to the, fully calendar for the public as well.
Okay. And, with that, do we have a motion for adjournment? No?
I
We'll
make
stick
the
around.
motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
thank you.